Hello everyone, Bashrob here. In this video, I'll look into 10 things I hear people claim are true in this game that were never really confirmed or investigated, because it's not easy to do so. So some believe them, other things they are made up. Now we'll finally know. I learned a lot of new things making this video, and about half of these surprised me quite a bit. Anyway, let's start with myth number 1. Sticks, branches and birch bark respawn after blizzards. This one is not true, but it's easy to see why people would believe it. It would make sense that strong winds break down branches, but there doesn't seem to be such a mechanic in the game. Sticks, branches, birch bark and a few other item spawns are called radial spawns. And how radial spawns work is that a random spawn duration is chosen between a minimum and a maximum, and once this time passes, the radial spawns refresh. Once these items are able to respawn, they do so when you next visit the area. But if you hang around in the area when they're supposed to respawn, then nothing happens. Otherwise, the sticks and branches would just randomly pop in front of you, which would be a little immersion break-in. So the game waits until you leave the area or go through a loading screen first. And that's more likely to happen during blizzards, since you'll probably be looking for shelter when a blizzard starts. But blizzards do not modify the respawn time in any way. Moving on to myth number 2, which is about wildlife respawns. If you don't harvest wolf carcasses, the wolves take a few days longer to respawn. This one is also false, and the confusion comes from how wolf spawns work. Unlike sticks or branches, animal respawn timer is not random at all. A wolf respawns 5 days since it was killed, and the timer starts ticking the moment the animal is killed. The respawn time is only influenced by the difficulty settings, so on late game interloper, for example, a wolf takes 4 times as long to respawn, just like any other wildlife does. And if you kill a pack, they spawn back one by one. But wolf spawns are so much more complex than bear or moose spawns that a lot of people believe wolves sometimes just respawn after 2 or 3 days in some areas. But what happens in reality is that the wolf spawns just changed, and the wolves you encountered a few days back despawned and were replaced by another pack that spawned instead. If you were to stay in such area and kill every wolf you see, you'd see wolves spawn back more frequently, simply because there might be 20 possible wolf spawns in that area, even if only 3 or 4 are active at one time. The next 2 myths are about crows. People believe all sorts of things about crows in this game, that they can lead you to loot, show you a way towards a bear, or that they signify weather change. The loot thing is hardly a myth, as crows circle around corpses and carcasses when weather is nice, and this is quite well known. But what about bear crows? Bear crows are a real thing, but maybe not in a way you think. Bear crows are audible if you pay close attention, but they are not visible. The crows you can see flying over sometimes have nothing to do with bears. The audio tied to bears seems to include crow sounds. They can be heard from farther away than most other bear sounds, and in fact, if you get too close to a bear, it will be harder or even impossible to hear them, so they are a good sign that a bear is somewhat close. The sound is quite easy to miss until you know exactly what it sounds like. I thought bear crows were made up for years myself, so just listen to this. It will likely be a lot more faint in game, but the sound is there and is distinct from other crows that you can actually see in game. If you hear this in the future, you know a bear is near. And what about the last type of crows? The one we can see flying over in some direction every now and then. There's an old rumor around that these are weather change crows and that they indicate a weather change, that their number and direction matters and so on. Obviously, this sounds made up, and even the devs answered at some point that a crow flyover does not actually mean anything, they're just there to improve game atmosphere. Me and a few others jokingly started calling these crows weather crows, as this is one of the few rumors officially confirmed to be false, which made us notice them more often, but then we noticed something weird. The crows actually seem to align with weather change sometimes. There's apparently even an old patch note that says something like crows will no longer fly too low and into the ground as the weather changes. Curious, I decided to look into how these work, and shockingly, weather crows are real, sort of, even if it was clearly not intended. A crow flyover happens randomly, completely unrelated to weather. Every 300 to 600 seconds, a flock of crows spawns and flies over the player in a random direction. Crow number or direction doesn't mean anything. The flock is only allowed to spawn in certain conditions though. They won't spawn if the player is inside a building, during the night, when the wind is high, or when it's snowing, and this is where it gets interesting. If a flock can't currently spawn for any reason, it will just wait to spawn until it can. In practice, this means if the wind drops or if the weather changes from snowy to not snowy, you are highly likely to see these weather change crows. The crows are not meant to directly signify weather change, but just happen to do that by sheer coincidence of how they are implemented. The next rumor is that the overhead lockers at the Pleasant Valley plane crash are not worth searching, as they never contain any items. This one is true currently. The overhead lockers do not have any associated loot table to draw loot from, so even on pilgrim loot settings, there won't be a single item in any of those lockers, ever. It's possible that this is a bug though, or maybe some kind of a change, as this was not always the case. So if you vaguely remember finding an item in one of those lockers, it might be true. It's just not possible on the current version. Number 6. Sprinting makes you warmer. This one is actually also true. There is a mechanic in the game where sprinting for a longer period increases your feels like temp slightly. And it's even been confirmed by Hinterland in an old post. The bonus caps at plus 4 degrees Celsius. This is another one I didn't believe until I tried testing it, and I think very few people know this mechanic exists. But there's a good reason for that. You lose the bonus pretty quickly when walking, and it takes much longer to recover your stamina than to burn it down sprinting, so you can never actually reach the full bonus unless you're using a stim. The mechanic might be a remnant from the old times when there was no stamina and you could sprint forever. There's so many Aurora related rumors floating around, it'll be hard to just pick one. One of them is that auroras only happen when weather is clear, similar to how blizzards can only happen when it's snowing. This is a myth, however, it's true the other way around. Clear weather in the evening can mean an aurora is starting, but auroras can also happen suddenly, regardless of weather. It's important to distinguish between evening auroras and night auroras. When the weather changes at night and you roll an aurora, it will power up electronics and turn wildlife into auroral wildlife quite quickly. You have no way to predict this. The skies could be clear before this happens, but it could also be cloudy, snowing, and so on. Evening auroras are a little different though, since they're not visible yet. You could already have rolled an aurora before sunset, but during the day, auroras look the same as clear weather, which is probably where the rumor comes from. Another aurora-related rumor is about aurora frequency, and it's hard to just pick one again, there's so many variations, but generally they sound something like, if you do this or that, you get more auroras. I looked into the ones I heard the most often. 1. Regions with a milling machine have more frequent auroras than other regions, so that you can use them more easily. This is a half myth, as Bleak Inlet really does have more frequent auroras than other regions, but Blackrock does not. Bleak Inlet is the only region in the game programmed to roll auroras more frequently, though it has nothing to do with milling machines, it's just how the region works. There's a related rumor that picking up the canary note increases aurora frequency. This one is not true. The rumor probably started because Bleak Inlet is so likely to get an aurora in the first place. Another rumor, you're more likely to get auroras after finishing the tails. This is also false. Auroras are RNG and nothing influences your chance to get an aurora other than being in Bleak Inlet or changing the aurora frequency rate in custom settings. Sometimes you just get lucky 3 nights in a row, sometimes you don't see an aurora 25 nights in a row. I had both happen, and if you play for long enough, it will happen to you too. However, there are guaranteed scripted auroras that happen after you perform certain actions, such as repairing a transmitter. When you repair a transmitter, you get a scripted aurora for the night. Immediately, it will even stop blizzards. And if you do it during the day, you will get an aurora the following night. But this is a one-time thing, and if you miss this aurora, you'll have to wait for natural auroras after. And the new trader mechanic also has scripted auroras. Whenever you complete a trade, you get a guaranteed aurora, just like when repairing a transmitter. And this one is infinitely repeatable. And one final aurora-related myth, which isn't really even a rumor, but for years the Aurora mine has been considered to be one of the most dangerous locations in the game, because you can only enter and exit via an elevator, which only works during auroras. Meaning you can get stuck down there if you fail to leave before an aurora ends and potentially die of thirst, hunger or cabin fever. So the advice in the community has always been, don't go down to the Aurora mine without a lot of food and water, as you could get stuck down there even for weeks if you're unlucky. But this is not true. If you get stuck in the Aurora mine, you will always get a scripted aurora the next night, exactly at 8:30 p.m. So you will never be stuck in the mine for more than 24 hours, unless you choose to do so or somehow sleep through the aurora. I went back and visited the Aurora mine on the update it was added into the game, and this wasn't always the case. You could get stuck down there back then. However, this change is clearly not that recent, as even the Forsaken Airfield update already had this mechanic. That said, Aurora Mine still remains one of the most dangerous areas in the game. Not because you could get stuck there, but because if you fall in the water, you will die extremely quickly from electric shock. Knowing that you're guaranteed an aurora if you stay down there, it actually makes it safer to explore the mine by waiting until the aurora ends, as you won't have to worry about being electrocuted trying to cross the water in the mine, sleep through the day, and exit early next night when you get the guaranteed aurora. And the final myth, indoor wolves are unique and hence do not respawn once you kill them. This one is partly true. In case you don't know, there are currently 4 indoor wolves: Fluffy in the Cannery Workshop, Scruffy in a cave in Desolation Point, Sketchy in one of the ice caves in HRV, and Frosty at the icy area in the large hub cave though the last one is a recent addition and I don't think there's one established community name. They don't always spawn and some are more rare than others, but Sketchy and Frosty will respawn even if killed, so never assume you're safe when passing through. Fluffy and Scruffy should never respawn once killed though. However, there is a bug which can make them respawn if you save the game by entering the locations and then reloading the save. Also, now that Wildlife Refresh is out, this list of indoor wolves might be incomplete. So it's best to assume any indoor wolves you encounter might respawn now. That's everything for now, thank you for watching.